about the RideSheet pilot program. We're really excited about this, and before we tell you more about it, we're going to give a few updates and things about National RTAP. My name is Liz Taylor. I'm the Assistant Director, and I'm excited to have Kevin Chambers and Noam Dickerson with us today. Kevin, next slide. So if you're not familiar with National RTAP, we are a technical assistance center funded by 5311 through FTA, and we provide no-cost training and technical assistance resources and services for rural and tribal transit providers and state programs. We have a review board that helps guide the development of our resources and events. We're based in Massachusetts and Washington, D.C., and hopefully you're familiar with our website. But if not, take a look around and see all that we have to offer. Next slide. These are our core areas. We offer training materials, either hard copy or e-learning, also webinars such as this one, information through our resource library with best practices articles, toolkits, technical briefs, a really wonderful e-newsletter. And we provide technology tools, which RideSheet is a potential additional technology tool. And the first step in our evaluation of that is this pilot program. So our other technology tools are Procurement Pro, Cost Allocation Calculator, Website Builder, and GTFS Builder. We also offer peer networking through webinars, roundtables. We have some online forums, and we offer technical assistance, whether it's a simple question or a more in-depth research question, and we connect peers to help each other. So that's the overview of what National RTAP has to offer. Next slide. And some of our upcoming virtual events over the next couple months. We have a Find Anything toolkit. And so the How to Find Almost Anything in Transit webinar will go over some changes to the toolkit and the resources in that toolkit. We have a fellow technical assistance center, the Transit Workforce Center, as well as a rural transit provider to share successful strategies for hiring transit drivers. So that's coming up in a couple weeks. And there are some new drug and alcohol regulation updates. So we think Sean Oswald at RLS and Associates is going to be presenting on June 22nd about those updates. We also will have a workshop run by the Shared Use Mobility Center and the TTI, the Texas A&M Transit Institute. They're going to be running a workshop to learn more about shared use mobility in rural, frontier, and tribal areas and challenges, and also discuss some successful strategies. Rural Transit Day is on July 16th, and we will be doing, that's a Sunday, so we'll be doing our annual Twitter chat on the 14th. And we have a lot of great resources and ideas for how you can celebrate Rural Transit Day on our website. And then we have a state RTAP manager roundtable on Zoom on July 18th, which is a great opportunity for states to share, discuss topics of interest with their peers. So that is what's coming up in terms of virtual events. And next slide, Kevin. And then we have our conference coming up in December. Hopefully registration will be launched in the next month, but please save the date. The call for presentations ends today. You can book your hotel room now and just keep track of updates at nationalrtap.org/conference 2023. That's where you can also find the call for presentations link. And we hope to see you then. Next slide. So today, again, really excited to have Kevin Chambers from Full Path and Noam Dickerson here to discuss, give a background on RideSheet, talk about the key features and the current status, go over the pilot program, the goals of it, the expectations and kind of commitments from the participants and National RTAP and Full Path, and the timeline and next steps for the pilot program. Kevin will do a demonstration of RideSheet so you can see what he's really talking about. We'll have plenty of time for questions, and then we'll share the link for how you can submit the Google form if you are interested, and we'll talk more about that later. But really excited to share this tool with you all and to see how we can meet the need for small transit agencies with what the software that they have created. So without further ado, Kevin, turning it over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here with you all and talking about RideSheet. It's been a work of several years now, and it's really wonderful to see it reach this point where we can present to you in this forum. So to introduce myself, my name is Kevin Chambers. I am the principal of Full Path Transit Technology. It's a company I created specifically to help small transit agencies use technology effectively. It came after working at a small specialized transportation agency, a nonprofit here in Portland, Oregon, called Ride Connection. I was the head of IT there for 7 years, and really cut my teeth on how poor the tools can be for small transit agencies who are trying to effectively grow their work, make life easier for themselves, and be able to tell the story through data of what they do. So the difficulties I ran into at Ride Connection really galvanized me to want to make change in the industry, and that is sort of the reason for Full Path's existing. So I think that's a good enough introduction for me. I want to pass the mic to Noam, who is a key collaborator on this project. Noam?
Hi, thanks, Kevin. I think that's a pretty good introduction, but yeah, I've been a software engineer working with Kevin on RideSheet for the last 1.5 years. And prior to that, I've been in transit now for about 6 years, mostly focused on technology that serves small urban and rural organizations. I'm not going to be giving much of this presentation, but if you have any questions about RideSheet, whether the technology or what this pilot might look like, I will be watching the chat. So please feel free to add any questions there if you just need some clarification, and I will be watching that and responding to you all. Thanks for being here.
Great. Thanks, Noam. Earlier today, Liz sent me the list of people who had registered for this event, and it was so diverse. I really wanted to visualize it, so I was able to dump this into Google Maps and come up with these pins. And so this is just exciting to me to have such a diversity of attendees. And I want to take this moment to ask our first poll question in terms of, this kind of, it was easy to get the geography of where people are at, but it's harder to know what type of organizations you're all coming from. So Liz, if you could launch the first poll where we ask about what type of organization you represent.
So quick update. It says I'm logged in from another device, so something funny is happening. So Kevin,
maybe I can try it. Let me see if I can launch it. Okay, there we go. Hopefully the poll questions come up for you. I am new to using Zoom poll, so it looks like we already have people posting, so that's great. All right, looks like we have mostly small transportation providers, which is wonderful to see. And we also see some people from state DOTs and some people from one person from a regional, whether an MPO or a COG or some sort of regional government entity. So that's wonderful. I think that is probably everyone. All right, I will end that poll and we'll move forward. And oh, now I can share the results. So I guess the results don't appear to the end. All right, we are learning. Now, next up, I want to talk about RideSheet and what problem it's trying to solve, or what problems. So the reality of many small providers is that they are tracking their data. And when I say small, I mean generally 1 to 10 vehicles. That is the target audience for RideSheet. 1 to 10 vehicles, small providers that are providing demand responsive services. So if it isn't really designed for fixed route, it's more demand responsive. But within that world of small transportation providers, many are tracking their services on paper or ad hoc spreadsheets. But with the increasing demands for data reporting and system management that have, we're seeing the need for data tools all the way down to even the smallest operators. But the existing solutions that are available are almost exclusively designed for larger organizations. There are a few exceptions out there, but they are few and far between. And the lack of tools that fit the needs of small providers really is a constraint. You know, it results in a lot of agencies just spending a lot of time trying to hand add numbers. And if it's complex reporting, like if there's any kind of cost allocation needing, or trying to having multiple funding sources being needed to be managed, that gets very burdensome. And it's hard to get good data in that environment, and it can really constrain growth. So those are the problems we're trying to solve with RideSheet. So what is RideSheet? It is an online internally facing spreadsheet for tracking customers and trips from ride request all the way through to funder reporting. It is built on Google Workspace tools to make internal agency collaboration easier. And it supports securely exchanging data with external systems using a new data standard. So let me jump on. I think we're ready for our next quiz question. I'd like to find out what people are using now. So I'm going to launch this next poll. What primary tracking system does your organization or an organization you support, if you are at a state DOT, for example, what do you all use? So let's go ahead and fill in with your answers. We'll give it a few seconds. When I think we get hit about 30 or so respondents, I'll go ahead and publish it. All right, any other respondents? Going once, going twice? All right, we'll stop it there, share the results. And so, you know, we've got some people on paper, kind of an even split between spreadsheets and custom software, such as using Microsoft Access or something of that like. And then we've got some people using off-the-shelf software. So that is interesting to learn. Thank you. And I will go on. I'm going to ask one more question here. Since this is sort of a Google Sheets and Google Workspace based tool, I'm curious how many people have experience with that. So, so this is our next question. Do your staff have any experience with Google Sheets or Google Docs? And I'll add that it's not required for people to have that experience, but it's just useful information for us just to get a sense for where people are. Okay, give it another second or two. Okay, so about 3/4 of you have some experience with it and about 1/4 do not. Thank you for that. So RideSheet is built entirely in Google Workspace, and there's a couple reasons for that. One of the main ones is that it makes the tool simpler, and we're really focused on simplicity. It is also just a very useful platform for what we want to do. So it has business logic, which I'll just call it basically some programming using a tool that's kind of in the background and kind of hidden behind menus for most users, but just sort of a couple clicks away if you want it, is a programming environment called Google Apps Script, which is basically JavaScript, which is basically the predominant programming language of the web. So it's something that's very widely known and used if you do software development. And it also integrates with other Google tools, Google Docs. We use that to create driver manifests. It can integrate with Google Calendar, so you can get sort of a nice visualization of trips that are entered. And it integrates with Maps so that we can, or Google Maps, for estimating trip distances and times. Let's see here. It came about through kind of a series of learnings. I think the first one was my company, together with Trillium Solutions, also based out of Portland, we went across rural Oregon and we started doing evaluations of transit agencies and provided technical assistance to small agencies across the state. This was started in 2019. And we kind of found out what tools were people were using. You know, I had my own experience at Ride Connection, but I didn't know what was representative, you know, across the state. So I got more information there. And then worked on another contract with Age Friendly Arizona to understand what was happening in that state, and found the same themes and sort of got increasingly confident that a simple tool like RideSheet would be useful. And the last piece of the puzzle was AARP, the Public Policy Institute. They provided seed funding for RideSheet. They were very interested in trying to explore different solutions within the world of specialized transportation, which is largely aimed at supporting the 50+ population. So those three things together made RideSheet possible. Our first pilot site was in Lake County, Oregon, and we have people from Lake County here in the room, so welcome. So Lake County, Oregon is roughly the size of Massachusetts, but with a population of about 8,200, 8,300 people. Most people are about half the population is down here in the county seat of Lakeview, close to the border with California and not far from Nevada. And the rest of the population is spread out across the county. If you could see the Oregon here, if you could see my mouse, the next major town that has medical specialists is up here in Bend, which is in Deschutes County. And then it's not uncommon for people living in Lakeview to need to go to Portland up here in Multnomah County if they need a more sort of a specialist. So there's a lot of travel that needs to happen within the county and across to other counties. Let's see here. So we have RideSheet installed and in use for the, I guess we're going over 2 years now at 2 different locations. The Lake County Senior Center Association, located in Lakeview, the county seat. They have paid drivers, 8 vehicles at last count. And folks, you can correct me later or feel free to put something in the chat if you've grown a bit. I tracked 5 funders with frequent funding source mixing on vehicle runs. So some Some people may get rides through the highly rural veterans funding source. Some may come in through state funding. Some may be being able to get a ride through Medicaid funding. And so it could be complicated to address those multiple funding sources when it comes to reporting and billing. And then the other agency is a volunteer driver program, the Inner Court Family Center. They're based in Paisley, in the central part of the state, with a lot of volunteers in Christmas Valley, which is in the northern part of the county. And they are a volunteer driver program using their own vehicles. They just have the one state funder, but they need to report their service data to the county, and then they need to pay mileage reimbursement to volunteers. So RideSheet helps with both of those things. So just to give an idea of the basic workflow of RideSheet, it is really meant, again, as a tool for operations. So you load in your vehicles and drivers at the outset. You load in who your riders are. Of course, you add them as new ones come in. When a trip request comes in, you enter that. You then assign that trip request to the driver and vehicle that you want to perform the trip. That's a manual process. So at this scale, a lot of what brings value for a scheduling and dispatching system, if you are a larger agency, is the ability to sort of have a system, an algorithm assign trips to buses and vehicles. And if you're at, certainly 15 vehicles and above, that can really make life easier. But in my personal experience of working with the smaller agencies, dispatchers often know what's needed, and an automated system doesn't bring a lot of value. And plus it keeps RideSheet simpler to have just manual assignment. Once you have all that entered, you can output paper or digital manifests for the drivers, so that everybody can see what they need to do. And at the end of the month, you can produce your summary reports, which allow you to tell your all the people you're accountable, your board, your funders, so on, and track make sure you have good quality data. So let me go on to the next slide. So there's a philosophy behind RideSheet, and I want to talk about that a little bit. And one of the main ones is approachability. So really, I think spreadsheets are the common denominator for data management these days. And if people are not yet familiar with spreadsheets, that's the place to start. And so designing a core tool that is already in a spreadsheet format, I think, is a great way to support small organizations. And it's the next thing you really want to move up to if you're coming from paper. And we also are already using the sharing and collaboration model of Google Sheets. So if you have familiarity with Google Workspace and being able to share a document and being able to collaborate in a document, all those approaches still work within RideSheet. We're just sort of drafting off of the capabilities that Google has already produced for everyone who uses these tools. And it's low cost. So if you're a nonprofit, there is no cost to using Google Workspace for businesses. The core, the sort of base level business setup, which is $6 per user per month for a business or government, is no charge for nonprofits. So either way, whether you're government or business or nonprofits, $6 per user per month is for most agencies an acceptable cost. It's designed for collaboration. Again, using all these things that are already built into Google Sheets, all the ability to share and also collaborate in a document in real time. So you can have multiple people entering data in RideSheet at the same time, because that's something that Google Sheets already allows and handles very, very effectively. You can have read-only access for specific users. So if you have people who need to see what's going on, but you don't want them being able to, fat finger a cell and change something, then that is something that you can set up. We could also set up specific sort of views into the core data through reports that basically create sort of live reports that anybody can see in the format they need to see it in. And if you need to get the data out and you really want to work in Excel, you can do that. That's basically a click away. The coding and the business logic that I mentioned earlier using Google Apps Script, that does not work, move over to Excel, but all the data does quite readily. And then we've added some features that I think are really bring a lot of value for the small transit agency. So one is we've added the ability to exchange trip requests and scheduled runs that have open seats with other RideSheet instances. So this is really what got us the funding from AARPs. They really wanted to be able to create tools for collaboration and coordination. So between the two agencies in Lakeview, they have the ability to exchange information about trip requests and send a trip request from one agency to the other. That's still in sort of in the experimental stage in that particular pilot site, but we've tested it, and the premise and the actual ability is already built into RideSheet. It's easy to export trips to Google Docs, either in PDF or in a Google Doc format. We can create kind of these live manifests where a driver can see what needs to be done, and if a trip were to be added to their route, that could be updated to their to sort of their view of the rough ride sheet in real time. So, and we can also send trips to Google Calendar for sort of an Outlook grid view. And there's a lot of tools that Google has been developing. I mean, this is a prime focus for Google's productivity initiatives. And so they've acquired a company a couple years back called AppSheet. And although we have not tested this yet, it may be possible to push data that's in RideSheet out to an app, and then make that data available sort of more easily to a driver, or potentially even to riders. So there's a lot of directions we can head, staying within the Google ecosystem. And this is very important to me. It's one of the reasons we've stayed sort of within the Google umbrella, is that Google, if you are subject to HIPAA and related data security laws, Google will sign a business associate agreement, which is kind of the core legal thing that says, yeah, we're going to keep your data secure. And that's so if you are using Google Sheets and Google Docs, your data is secured. So that is a shared responsibility model. So what Google is saying is they will do everything in their power to keep things secure. But if you or your staff, put your passwords on a sticky note and put it on your monitor, that's on you. That's not on Google, right? So, so it's easy to keep things secure if you, which is really key, because since demand responsive services, by their nature, need to know specifics about people, their names, where they live, things like that. So that security is built into RideSheet through Google's efforts. And it's easy to make backups. So I kind of adding in security against data loss when I say security in that sense. And so it's easy to get things out. You can, again, export them to Excel, and as well as just back them up, make copies of RideSheet anytime you want within Google Drive. And secure the other sort of data loss prevention strategy, which is frankly just fantastic, and really what makes Google Sheets different from the Excel that we're used to, is that every time a cell is changed, that change is logged. And you can go back and see prior versions before that change. So over the course of working with the two agencies in Lake County, all sorts of mistakes were made. Users would sometimes delete data, but also like our programming code sometimes messed up and would delete things. But in every case, we were able to recover whatever was lost. So in the over 2 years of using RideSheet at those two agencies, I'm not aware of a single piece of data that has been lost. So that's really critical and really what makes this different from a conventional spreadsheet that sort of those of us who are older grew up with. So again, and final, I think one of our final elements is just RideSheet is designed for openness. So the code that we use in Google Apps Script is available. It is the standard place where people put open source programming code is a place called GitHub. It's available on GitHub. People could make their own copies. They could reuse it to their liking. It's under a very permissive license where basically if you want it, you can use it. You don't have to share it back with us. You can do whatever you want with it. We really want this to be something that is a resource to agencies, no matter where you are. And even if you don't want to work with RTAP or Full Path, you can just take these things and run with them. And it can all be done in the browser. Like you don't even need a special computer. You don't need special software. It's possible to do some of the software development in sort of specific programming tools, but you don't need to. And I wrote for the first year and a half or so, I wrote all the code and I just did it in the kind of built-in development environment that Google provides in a browser. So there is a limit to the openness in the sense that we are very reliant on Google. So Google Sheets itself is not open source, and it's not something we could switch over readily to another spreadsheet tool like OpenOffice or Microsoft tools. So openness to the degree that we could make it so. And finally, well, no, I keep having more things here that it's designed for. So it is capable of complex reporting. The fact that we can get estimates for time and distance make this, we can do some things that are really help with agencies like the Senior Center in Lakeview that has multiple funding sources, and we're trying to figure out how to parse out the costs of a vehicle run across, 2 or 3 sources at a time. I'll show that later. And really, like, the data is in a spreadsheet. So all the things you could do in terms of data analysis and tracking, aggregating data, you can do using RideSheet. And we are designed to be scalable. So in the sense of this is designed to go across many, many agencies that are small. There's a lot of agencies that are on paper and spreadsheets or tools that aren't really working well for them. And we don't really see this growing to agencies that have more than, say, 12 vehicles or that are doing fixed route service. But we do see that this could be a great place for agencies to start and to eventually graduate from. If they are able to grow faster because they're using RideSheet and then they need a bigger system, great, fantastic. That would really be something to celebrate. Oh, and so where do things, I'm going, here we go. And where do things stand now? So we got seed funding from ARP. And so we've been able to demonstrate higher data quality, that the less time being spent on generating reports, and high levels of staff satisfaction. And we have data sharing between the two agencies that is in place and being tested. Where do we see this being used going forward? And there's 3 scenarios. One is just getting small agencies off of paper or off of their own kind of ad hoc spreadsheets. That's what this pilot is about. There's another scenario, which is once those standalone systems are in place and agencies are really have mastered the use of RideSheet, being able to use it for exchanging data between RideSheet instances or between RideSheet and other vendor software. So we do adhere to a standard for this data exchange. It's a new standard and kind of early in its starting, but we want to be able to have RideSheet talk to any system that will talk to it. So so those coordination schemes are exciting for us. And I think there's also a third scenario, which I'll just mention in passing, which is that there's larger settings where people may want to do coordination, but it can be very hard to get the software in place to make that easy. And RideSheet as a simpler and sort of easy to adjust tool could be a great place for getting a proof of concept out and working, and then transferring that coordination scheme to a different software system once it was sort of the proof of concept was completed. So one thing I try not to do with RideSheet is tell people that it will solve everybody's problems. It'll be the best thing ever, and you won't have to worry about your tracking your data anymore. Tracking your data and are having problems with data management. The things that are low cost or free are Google Workspace itself and RideSheet, but there's still a lot of cost to being successful with technology. So in this specific case, having experience with management of data that's in a spreadsheet, having reliable internet connectivity will be very important. This because it is cloud-based. If you go offline, really you've lost live access to this cloud-based spreadsheet. Having documentation for how you do your work, that may take some time. There's going to be training for staff, not just around using RideSheet specifically, but also like how to use a cloud-based system, password management, policies and procedures for keeping the data secure. And also, and this is the course most difficult to quantify one, is there's a cost to changing. If you've been in one system, you're going to switch to another. There's all sorts of impacts to that. Like everybody's going to have to change what they do in some way or other. And that willingness to change and the level of effort it takes, the leadership, the staff buy-in, all those sorts of things are things that you want to be thinking about when evaluating something like RideSheet. So RideSheet is really designed to be the leanest possible digital tool for small agencies to track their demand responsive operations accurately, effectively, and reliably. So, and once you have that lean system in place, you can see where there are other issues you may need to address. So, and again, those are sort of the items I brought up earlier. It's like the ability to take a look at your workflows within the organization of maybe making sure everybody understands the importance of data tracking. Sometimes drivers don't realize how important it is that everything gets counted, that all the boardings get tracked and so on, because they don't see the reporting end. So there may be all sorts of organizational things that need to happen. And the goal of RideSheet is to support those efforts of institutional change and capacity building. Now, let's talk about this pilot a bit. The goals for this pilot are to deploy RideSheet to 3 agencies that are not using it yet. And we're also wanting to build the infrastructure so that RideSheet can be used at many agencies, and all the sort of things around the tool are in place and effective supports. So we want to have an agency readiness assessment. So any agency that is considering using RideSheet could go through a process and see what they have in place that's already working well, and and where they may need to put in some effort to be successful with the tool. We want a streamlined onboarding process where everybody can see what they need to do. And we will have documentation so that whenever there's staff turnover, whenever somebody has a question, hopefully they can go to the online documentation and see what they need to do. Perhaps have some informational videos, some how-tos, so on. So right now, with the 2 pilots that are in place in Lakeview, they have access to Gnome and I, but we haven't really set up any written documentation. So that is one of the things we'll be building out. And we want to be building a supportive community of users that can support one another and help work on developing a roadmap for enhancements. So what are the things that would really make RideSheet even more useful, either for the agencies already using it or for future agencies? And we want to evaluate the impacts of RideSheet on the pilot agencies so we can see if it really is all the things that we hope it will be, and if it's falling short, what we can do to address those shortfalls. So the long-term goals are to make RideSheet as much of a self-serve tool as possible. That's really what several of RTAP's other technology tools are like. An agency can go in, use them at their leisure. And maybe some support is available from RTAP staff or contractors, but they kind of starts off as a self-serve tool. So RideSheet is a more it's trying to tackle a more complex domain. But as much as possible, we want tools for agencies to be able to self-assess, have a streamlined onboarding process to get with RideSheet, have it be a good support for organizational change, and then have peers be able to support each other around using it. We also have the long-term goals of having the documentation be in constant evolution and kept up to date. And the goal of this project is not to set up coordination between agencies, but we want that in the long term. And also, potential features we could add are things like tracking preventive maintenance, driver credentialing, and perhaps the things along in those veins. Let's see here. So let me take a moment here. I'm going to launch another poll. Give me a chance to catch my breath and see if there's anything in the chat. So I'm curious to find out what fleet sizes are here amongst the group. So we've got some ranges there. I'll give that another 5 seconds. Okay, and we've got one agency with between 1 and 3 vehicles, and then sort of an even split between 4 to 6, 7 to 10, and 11 plus. So it's okay. So several agencies there that are kind of in our target group, and if the ones that are 11 plus, only have a smaller fleet that's dedicated to demand responsive services, then that could be a good target for RideSheet also. All right. So next up, let's talk about the pilot. So what is RTAP committing to, and what is Full Pack committing to with the agencies that are selected for this pilot. So we'll help you out with getting the agreement in place, a memorandum of agreement, and we will be setting up RideSheet with you. That may involve needing to get you set up with Google Workspace if you don't have it already. So we'd want an organizational account to make sure that we can get you all the data privacy and the related that comes with having a business account. So we wouldn't set this up on sort of people's personal or it's kind of a single user version of Google Workspace. We'd get your data migrated, and we'd help you with creating your custom reports. And there may be some room in there for customizations depending on what they are. But since this is, we're still so new to it, we really want to make sure that whoever's selected, that it really works for the organization. Staff training via Zoom, so we won't be doing any on-site training. And then support for the first year. So we'll help you with making the changes to your organization, any updates that we make to RideSheet. We'll support you with making sure you get all those updates and bug fixes, and we'll help build the user community as it grows. Expectations we have of selected agency would be, one is going back to that idea of willingness to change. And so that may involve learning new skills and new tools, changing how you do things, and working over your processes until things are working well. And it's hard to know what that might involve at the outset. We can, make some estimates, but certainly there will any kind of technology like this will involve that. So we'll need agreement from the organization for that. And for that, really, it means committing time. So providing feedback about the software, what's going well, what's not, how can we improve it, helping us some with documentation, and participating in these the user community. We also would, once we get to the point where we can evaluate and talk about how the pilot went, we'd like your help with that, to be able to participate in a webinar or conference sessions. The RTAP conference is coming up in December, and our hope would be that by the time that conference happens, we'll be able to talk about how what's going well and what the future could be for RideSheet. So, and finally, that if RideSheet is working well for you, that you are able to commit post-pilot resources to get support for the tool after the first year. So that would be starting in October of 2024. We estimate that the year-to-year support cost would be in the range of about $2,000. Criteria for selecting the agencies. We want the providers to be funded by 5311 FTA funds. So those are that is FTA rural. And so preference will be given to rural and tribal providers. You need to be able to adopt the Google Workspace environment, as I've mentioned earlier. And again, being able to dedicate time to implementing, using, providing feedback, and participating in the RideSheet community as it develops. And we also want a diversity of representation. So we're not thinking we want 3 different agencies that are all identical. We would like some diversity. It's hard to know how to articulate that now until we see who actually applies to be part of the pilot, but we'd like to kind of vet our the idea that RideSheet can be used in a number of different agency sizes and conditions through this pilot. So there's an assessment, there's a survey that give you a link to it a little bit. That's going to be due June 16th. We're hoping to select the agencies in late June, get agreements in place in the month of July, get agencies set up with RideSheet in July and August, and then use the following months to take a look at what kind of customizations may be needed. So that RideSheet really is a good fit for those selected agencies, and then use the year from deployment as the period to support and evaluate. All right. I'm going to pause here and just check in with RTAP staff and Noam, see if there's anything I should check in about before I do a demonstration. Are we good?
I think we're good. You know, if anybody has any questions, you can start putting those in the chat, and then you know, maybe Kevin can demonstrate, you know, include that in the demonstration or answer them. So feel free to you know, put in questions now. I will share a link to that you know, application form, and it's, you know, the pilot, it's more finding a good fit, you know, for this pilot program. So we'll put that link in there. But otherwise, there's no questions have come in yet. So I would say go ahead and continue, and feel free.
Thank you.
Verbally, raise your hand.
Great. You know, I think maybe this is a good moment. So I saw that we have Andrea I saw Andrea on camera. Let's see, I think we have our folks from Lincoln. Oh, Linda, there you are. Linda, are you tuned in?
Yes, I am.
Hi, welcome. So Linda is the head of the transportation program for the senior center in Lake County. And I'm just going to put you on the spot for a minute and invite you, as well as Andrea, if she's still on the joining us, to just say anything you want to say about RideSheet and how it's worked for you.
Well, I can address that. I know that Kevin said he can't say it's the best thing ever, but he's lying. It is the best thing ever. We went from sticky notes to memories to fingers crossed to hand signals to drivers as far as trying to schedule rides, to now a manifest goes to their email. That manifest tells them exactly what vehicle, who they're picking up, what the situation might be, if they're in a wheelchair, if they need to make extra stops. Also on that manifest is a GPS locator. So a driver can now just click on the address that is on the manifest and it will give them directions. That's something Kevin didn't mention as being a real perk, but it is. It's quite the perk. So you don't have a driver fiddling around trying to figure out their ride. It's all in one spot. The RideSheet has given us the ability to accurately disperse or request funds from our funders. That's very important. If you're working with government funding at all, they're very particular and want to know exactly what happened. And instead of eraser marks and whiteout, we have this wonderful report that actually can be manipulated before the final report. That's the other good thing. You say, well, it wasn't really 1,000 miles to Portland. I made a mistake. So very easily you can spot those mistakes and fix them quickly. And that changed information kind of penetrates all the other reports too. So you don't have to change a million things. You just change one. But anyway, it's worked great. We've enjoyed being the guinea pig, and we have had some outrageous requests that Kevin says, no, it doesn't do dishes, but we still ask. Otherwise, it really does. It has simplified and I guess just made us feel much more confident in reporting and in our ride situation.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And thank you for the kind words. So let me walk through a little bit of that, because I think Linda brought up a few things that it does that I think would be useful to point out. So first, I'll just give you a quick tour. So basically, the way we use Google Sheets is every tab is a data table. So the first row are the column headings. Every row after that is a record. So we're using Google Sheets effectively as a stand-in for a relational database system, effectively, and it works well for that because Google Spreadsheets kind of allows that type of use. So here, each tab is named according to what it does. So we have a customers tab here, and I have some dummy data here. We have a trips tab, which is where the trip requests are put. Runs is where we list what a vehicle, basically it's a driver vehicle run combination. So this is where we're able to enter later, not on this tab, but later, what the odometer readings were, what the actual mileage and time for a run were. So these are the kind of the most active tabs. Once a trip is performed and the run has been completed, we have these tabs here where you enter the data after the fact. So let me just go in here. I don't know. First, show you what it looks like to enter data. So first, I'm just going to enter myself as a new customer. And we'll say I'll just so I'm just going to put in my address, and it will check it. So this is one thing that it does. So after I enter it, there's a little bit of code that runs out to Google Maps and says, is this an okay address? And if it is, then it just sort of makes sure it's properly formatted and all so on. So let's say my normal place I go to is the Fred Meyer store on Hawthorne here in Portland. So actually, I wanted this to be I'm going to move this. This is my default drop-off address. That's where I go most of the time. My home address is also my default pickup address. So you'll notice here when I entered this Fred Meyer, if Google Maps, if you give enough of a description that Google Maps knows pretty much exactly where it is, it will replace your description with a street address. So that's what it did here. So it took my Fred Meyer on Hawthorne and it turned it into 3805 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard, gave it a zip code, everything. So it's not a latitude, longitude, but this can be easily turned into a latitude, longitude because it's been sort of a confirmed address with Google Maps. So with that in place, I can now go in here to trips and create a new trip. So let me just create a few extra rows here. So it's just a little bit more roomy. There we go. And I'm going to create a trip for myself for tomorrow. And I'm going to create, so I just started typing the name. You can see there's a drop down here, so I don't have to type it all in exactly. And as soon as I enter the person, a bunch of things happen here. One is that it took the default pickup address from the customer record and it dropped it into the pickup address for this trip. And if this is wrong, if this is not where the person needs to be picked up, we can just overwrite it. But this can save some typing. So it entered all that, and way off here, it filled in some data which is valuable for estimating purposes across a couple of different areas. So it estimated the distance between my pickup and drop-off addresses in terms of the mileage and the estimated travel time. So that is, I can use that now and say, well, I want the drop-off for this to be at, let's say, 3 p.m. I have a 3 p.m. appointment time. And based on that, I've already configured RideSheet to say I want a 10-minute gap between the appointment time and the drop-off time. So it just basically subtracted 10 minutes and put this number in here. And then it added this time with some cushion, so based on the travel time with some cushion. So any of this can be overwritten, but this is, again, RideSheet just trying to be helpful in ways that it can be. And then I'm going to assign this to a driver. So this Lex Luthor here, LL, is my driver. And this driver has a default vehicle that they normally use. So this is filling in for me. And so now I actually have 3 different trips all set up here. And I can now go here and create a manifest for this day. So I'm going to pick, my mouse, I've already selected 6-1. I'm on a row with 6-1. So it's going to create a manifest for that. And so it's working on that. So this is where RideSheet lives. It lives in Google Drive. This is the document we've just been looking at is right here. And then we've got some subfolders, and one of them is this manifest report. I created one of these earlier today, but this is the one right here that I created right now. And this has everything written. So the format of this is adjustable. There's a template that you can change, but I've got some blanks up here where the driver would handwrite when they actually got into the vehicle and when they left, started end odometers. But here is all the trips for the day. And Linda mentioned the ability to see the locations of and use Google Maps. So within this PDF, these addresses are actually links, and they are specially crafted links to move to Google, to open up Google Maps as driving directions. So if I click on that now, you'll see the driving directions from my current location over here to the Fred Meyer. So that's very handy. One of the challenges of the rural environment is often Google Maps' ability to know the location of an address in terms of the latitude longitude is often poor. In many times, like it could be off by a kilometer or more. You give a number on a rural highway, and it's like, oh, that's cringingly wrong. So we actually have the ability to, in lieu of addresses, use a thing called plus codes. And so RideSheet has been configured to be able to do plus codes, which I don't have any here in my test environment. So apologies for that. But so that's one quick workflow, is the ability to create trips, assign those trips to drivers, and then generate a manifest. And then all these estimates, let's say all these different riders were under different funding sources. One was being funded by the Area Agency on Aging. The other one was highly rural, the Veterans Service. Another one would be a state funding, like our specialized transportation funds. Now, the fact that we have these estimates of travel means that we could actually create a ratio between all these runs. And so you could see that 2 of these trips are about the same in length, but one is shorter. So we could actually create to sort of add all these, the total mileage across all these estimates is about 12. And so you could see how this agency could be billed for about 5/12 of the run, this also for 5/12, and this for about 1.5/12. So that can really make some of these complicated funding issues easier. I think that is about as much as makes sense within the confines of our webinar.
Kevin, we
n-
did have a question about calculate, and this sort of ties into what you were just showing from Teresa. Will RideSheet calculate monthly rides and mileage by vehicle and break down by disabled, 60 plus, and general public? So maybe just showing some of the reporting might be helpful.
Yeah. So, I'm as part of this demo, I haven't prepared the reporting side. And there's a couple reasons for that. One of them is just reporting can vary a fair bit from agency to agency. So, just in our 2-agency pilot between the senior center and the volunteer driver program, they have pretty different reporting. And so I haven't tried to make sort of a master reporting tool, but basically just leveraging what Google Sheets is capable of. So what we do here is, first of all, anytime you want to track something about a trip or a customer, you can just do it. So we have in here, for example, the default service ID, default service level, default mobility factors, all these things that are the sort of default for this a given rider. When we create a new trip, everything that's labeled default, if there's a matching column that just says the same thing, but without the default. So for example, here we've got default mobility factors. Over here in the trip, we have a mobility factors column. So that information copies over to the trip. So if for example, I was using a mobility device, right, an oxygen tank or a motorized wheelchair, and I had that in my customer record, that would copy over to the trip, as well as any other attribute that we want to have. So for example, if I were a veteran, we could have a checkbox for whether I was a veteran that could copy over to the trip. And then as this information goes through the workflow of data validation, once this trip that we've created here, which is now for tomorrow, when that moves into the past, we have a process for moving these trips over to review. And basically we're just moving those trips over so that we can look at them and add these key, basically this key column, which is what happened. Did the trip happen? And we put in here that it was, we could put that trip was completed. And then once that information is, all the fields have been filled out. In the case of runs, there's more fields because we want start time, end time, and odometers. So these would be the fields that would be filled in for runs. Once everything's been filled in, then we can move the trips over here to the archive, trip archive and run archive. Once the data is in trip archive or run archive, then you have a validated data set that you can report off of. And as long as the data elements are there, all the types of aggregation that you may want to do, where you maybe want to see mileage across all the vehicles, mileage across certain types of vehicles, mileage is just one vehicle over the course of a month, how many trips were provided to veterans, how many were elderly and disabled, all those sorts of things are possible.
Super, thank you. Let's see, we have, do we want to just go into questions, or is there is another question? Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I see it there. When filling out the assessment, do you want information about fixed route as well as demand response, or you just want the demand responsive service vehicles and drivers? It would be great to know about your whole organization. And I think just to get a full view, and then you could also just sort of specify, there's a few sort of paragraph type responses, and you could kind of drill down into the details there. So I would say both and, just to be on the safe side. I'm a data person and I always want to know more data.
Super. Well, if anybody has any other questions, go ahead and put them in there into the Q&A or the chat. Either one works.
And I do have a couple more questions in terms of for the polls. So the cost allocation stuff can be really valuable to those who need it. And I want to ask a question about how many people actually do need that. So does your organization or an organization you support rely on multiple funding sources and need cost allocation tracking? All right, I'll give another 10 seconds there. And if you're unsure, you can just. Let's see. As a DOT, how do you, let me end this poll and then I'll go to the question that came up in the chat. Okay, it looks like 41% do have multiple funding sources and need to manage allocating of costs across those funding sources. About 30% do not, and then the remainder are unsure or not, doesn't apply to them. So thank you for that. So there's a question. As a DOT, how do you believe it would be best to get a provider or two to apply? I'm trying to think of anything that would, I would say that it really sort of depends. There's so many different relationships between DOTs and providers that it's hard to give it a across the board answer. I mean, I think that's something I would be happy to talk with you offline about. Some some DOTs have absolutely stellar relationships with agencies, and if you make a recommendation, they'll be like, great. And sometimes agencies struggle to have those effective relationships. So I wish I had a single answer for you, but yeah, Sarah, let's see if we can connect.
And I think the only other thing to add to that is, the agencies definitely need to, buy into this and really want this.
Yes.
So because there is going to be a little bit time commitment, and you have to want to change to make a change. So good to suggest and make sure they're aware of this. But just to plug for making sure they're really excited about it. Is part of our criteria.
Great. And I have one last poll question. Let's see, where did my poll? When did it go? There it is. The last question is about whether this seems like it will be helpful to your agency. So now that you've gotten a tour, you kind of see what it is and what it can do. Does this look appealing to you?
Johnny, we'll get to you in just 1 second. We'll close out the poll and then you can ask your question.
Okay. All right. Give it a couple more seconds. Okay. So, and about 2/3 of you thought this would be helpful. So that's great news. I mean, I think this got out to the right group. For those of you who it's not a good fit, thank you for coming, and feel free to share the information about it to others. And there's another question here. Is there one
Johnny, did you want to ask a question?
Sure,
Or-
thank you, Liz.
Sure.
Kevin, forgive me if I missed this in the very beginning. We had a couple of things going on in the background here. But is there a way to show like time availability for different providers?
Say
You
a
know
little
what
more.
I mean? Like maybe this provider or driver and vehicle are available at this time, but maybe, especially if you're working with collaboration
Yeah.
and collaborating maybe with different agencies, different 5311 agencies or human service agencies, to complete a ride.
So would this be like within your own organization, figuring out whether there's, like a trip request comes in and you want to know whether you have a driver and vehicle that's available? Or would this be like trying to find out whether another organization has a driver or vehicle available?
I think maybe both.
Yeah.
Like let's say that, maybe we had a partner that didn't have any availability, but they were looking to see if we would be able to make the trip for them or vice versa,
Yeah.
or a portion thereof.
There's a lot of possibilities there. Let me tell you what we've done. So one thing that we can do is load ahead of time what vehicle runs you have scheduled. So here, let me just, I just left this here. Let me leave this. So there's a number of different, ways that trips and runs can be connected to each other. So one of the things that we could do is have the ability for you to just enter manually what vehicles are assignments have already been set up. So, in here we have a scheduled start time and a scheduled end time, so you could kind of see what's possible. We haven't built a lot of tools for seeing like when somebody is full up. The ability to push trips to a calendar or to another external report so you can kind of see if slots are filled up is something that we've explored. We've been in some conversations with an agency in Utah where they basically have this kind of a half hour or is it an hour based slot system. So like, basically one trip per slot, and that works for kind of a smaller, more urbanized area. So we've done some sort of proofs of concept there within an agency. It really just depends on the requirements. So that would be potentially something that we could explore in the world of adding features as part of the, kind of the first months of a selected agency. The other thing that we've done for between agencies, and I don't have it here for this setting, but and this is around the coordination stuff that kind of beyond the scope of this pilot, but we have the ability to share trips. So I've actually hidden, I think it's right here. So there's the ability to, if we have the coordination functionality in place and exchanging data, you can just click on a trip here and basically what this does, if you have a trip request that you're like, oh, man, I don't know if we can do this, you could basically publish that trip to the other participants in the coordination scheme, and they will be able to see that you would like that trip carried out by somebody else. So there's that ability to sort of like push it out there and just see who will take it. The other thing that we've created is that once a run is created, once like for example, these 3 trips, we have 3 pickups, 3 drop-offs. We've created a system where another agency can see that vehicle run, and can see whether, oh, look at that, there's a bus leaving, and kind of to go back to the use case for this, the scenario that we were imagining is that here in Lake County, there's we've got buses that are leaving Lakeview and going up to Bend. If the volunteer driver program could see that there's going to be a bus passing through Paisley, passing by Christmas Valley or Summer Lake on its way north, if you could just sort of see that a vehicle is planning on doing that in a couple of days, and then you get a call as the volunteer driver program and say, hey, I want to go to Bend on Wednesday. It saves a call both for the rider or for the volunteer driver program to say, you can get on this bus that's already going. It's going to be passing through Paisley at about 11. We can get you on that bus, or you can call the senior center directly and get them on that bus. So those are a couple scenarios that we've explored already.
And I remember us discussing this a bit. The reason that I ask is because we have such a large service area.
Yeah.
And when I think about this sheet, and maybe collaborating with other 5311s, but also for medical needs, if someone from the healthcare system, if we wanted to share this sheet with them, for them to be able to see availability, or working with our tribal reservations to the north of us, we have two, and
Yep.
working with Indian Health Services there, to be able to get people back and forth between Nebraska and South Dakota, and so that's kind of where my mind was going with that. So I love that there's some different possibilities there.
There's several different possibilities, and it's also possible now. Just again, another element of the Google environment is they've created. Let me just leave this for a second. Another thing that it's easy to create on the fly, and it would take some time to make sure to dial it in right, is creating a survey tool, basically using Google Forms, where it could either be public facing for a rider, or something that would be available to a clinic to put in trip requests and have them maybe not drop in directly into this trip section, but drop into we could create another tab called requested trips or something. And then if that, you can see that, somebody through a, somebody's requested it online, and then you can, respond to that. So there's a lot of different ways we could go.
Well, and one of our state Medicaid brokers has kind of like a portal-like system.
Right.
That actually goes out into the marketplace, that sort of thing, for people to be able to pick up those rides. And we kind of wish that the other brokers did as well, because it's kind of nice to be able to see your service area plus someone else's, and if there's any overlap. But I don't want to consume any more time, but I love the possibilities of just the different faces that it can be for users or for the public in that. So thank you, Kevin.
Yep. And I see there was a question. Let's see here. Looks like. And Linda put in a comment here, because rideshare is spreadsheet based, I'm able to copy and paste any part of RideSheet trips to a newer Excel spreadsheet. In that sheet, I can sort, compare, add mileage, driver rides, vehicle rides. So I think this is in response to the earlier question about being able to track data granularly. So basically confirming that. And John Chase, who's with an agency in Utah that's exploring RideSheet, has confirmed that also. So are there any other questions in the wings that I have missed?
The question did come in and it was sent privately, but the question was if an agency that doesn't receive 5311 funding would be eligible. And so I would say submit the form. We don't know who all is going to be interested, and that would be our goal. That is National RTAP's target is recipients of 5311 funding in a rural or tribal area, but you know, we can certainly take it into consideration if it's appropriate. So submit that, and as Kevin mentioned earlier, this is an open source tool, so there's nothing to stop you from using it, or you know, but for our purposes, we do want to make sure our focus is on rural and tribal public transit organizations. But I would say submit the form, and if you have any specific questions, you know, feel free to contact us and we can talk about it. And
Great.
and as he also Kevin mentioned, you know, the goal is that down the line, this can be available to anybody, and the documentation will make it, you know, easier for others to use at, again, this low cost, and that's why it might be a good fit for our technology tools. So this is our first step, but we still have a little more time if anyone has any questions. And you can see the next steps on the screen. Thanks, Kevin. Great, I'm not seeing any. I did put a couple of the links for things that I mentioned when we first started about some other upcoming webinars and our conference. And you know, the link is on the screen. I can put it in the chat again if anybody needs it. There is going to be a very quick survey that will pop up when you leave this webinar. So, you know, I know that's a lot of different forms. The link is also in that one to the actual assessment form, but the survey can just also help us collect any feedback. If you're not interested, or you just want to get, like it says at the bottom here, an update about how the pilot's going or anything else about RideSheet, you can just kind of stay on that little list. And you could also give us feedback, and if there's a different, you know, something else within this topic that you would like National RTAP to do a webinar on, or anything that's needed, you know, that would be for the actual webinar survey, which you will get in just a moment. So I think that's it. If you want to go to any other closing slides, I just want to thank you, Kevin and Noam, for, you know, all the work you've done on this so far and meeting the need of these small agencies. Thank you to Linda for chiming in about your use of it and experience so far, and starting off that community that we're hoping that this will build. Thank you everyone who joined and for your interest. And hopefully together we can, you know, make this a great and even better tool for the agencies where it can really make a difference. Anything else, Kevin?
Nothing for me. Thank you all for taking the time to join us.
Sounds great. We will have a recording of this. It'll be posted on our website, usually pretty quickly, but we say within 1 week. So that'll be nationalrtap.org/webinars. And so if you wanted to show it to anybody else in your organization who might be interested, you'll be able to do that. We can also put the slides up, and reach out if you have any questions. And we hope to work with some of you on the pilot project, and I hope to see you at another event soon, and hopefully in Myrtle Beach in December. And yeah, sounds great. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.